For an American aviator in the 1960s, the world was divided into two realities. There was the reality of the sky. Up there, at 20,000 feet, you were a god. You were wrapped in a multi-million-dollar machine, an F-4 Phantom or an F-105 Thunderchief. You traveled at Mach 1. You had air conditioning. You felt invincible. And then there was the reality of the ground, the mud, the heat, the enemy. The distance between being a god and being a prisoner was measured in seconds. It usually started with a warning tone in your headset. The R-HAW gear, radar homing and warning, screaming that a radar had locked onto you. Then you saw it. The flying telephone pole. An SA-2 surface-to-air missile launching from the rice paddies below. A cloud of dust, a flash of fire, and then a white contrail racing up to meet you at 3 times the speed of sound. You brake left, you dive. You pull 6 Gs, trying to outturn the missile. Sometimes you make it. Sometimes you don't. The impact of a SAM warhead is catastrophic. The plane doesn't just break, it disintegrates. The cockpit fills with smoke and fire instantly. The controls go dead in your hands. You have one option left. The handles between your legs. Pull. The canopy blows off. The rocket under your ejection seat fires. In a split second, you are kicked out of your technological womb into a 600-mile-per-hour wind stream. The G-force can snap your neck. The wind blast tears your oxygen mask off. Debris shreds your flight suit. And then, silence. The parachute opens. You are hanging in the air, drifting down. You look down, and you see the Red River Valley, the most heavily defended airspace in the history of warfare. And you see them waiting for you. Farmers with pitchforks, militia with old rifles, soldiers running from the tree lines. You are floating down into a hornet's nest. You check your survival radio. You call Mayday. But you know the rescue helicopter, the Jolly Green Giant, is too far away. You hit the ground. The impact often breaks a leg or an ankle. You are crippled. You try to crawl into the bushes. You pull out your .38 caliber revolver. But what is 6 bullets against an entire village? The capture is brutal. You have to understand the anger on the ground. You have just bombed their bridges, their factories, sometimes their homes. You are the air pirate. They strip you. They take your boots, your flight suit, your watch. They beat you. With fists, with rifle butts, with bamboo sticks. They tie your arms behind your back so tight that your elbows touch. The pain is blinding. The circulation cuts off, and your hands turn black. They march you through the villages. It's a parade of humiliation. People scream at you, spit on you, throw rocks. You are dragged through the mud, naked or in your underwear, bleeding, broken. The god of the sky is gone. You are now just a piece of meat. You are loaded onto a truck. A blindfold is tied around your eyes. The truck bounces over bomb-cratered roads for hours, maybe days. You don't know where you are going. You only know that your life as a free man is over. Eventually, the truck stops. You smell the city. You hear the sounds of bicycles and horns. The tailgate opens. You are pulled out. You can't see, but you can feel the walls. High walls, stone walls. You hear the heavy iron clang of a gate slamming shut behind you. Welcome to the Hanoi Hilton. Hoa Lo Prison. The Vietnamese called it the fiery furnace. The prisoners with a dark sense of humor called it the Hanoi Hilton. Built by the French in the 19th century to hold Vietnamese revolutionaries, it was a dungeon of concrete, rusted iron, and broken glass. When you arrived, you weren't taken to a cell. You were taken to New Guy Village. Specifically, a section called Heartbreak Hotel. This was where they broke you. The interrogation wasn't like the movies. It wasn't a guy with a bright light asking questions. It was medieval. The interrogator, a man we often called the Bug, or the Rabbit, would sit at a table. He didn't want military secrets. He knew we didn't know the strategic targets. He wanted something else. He wanted your soul. He wanted a confession. He wanted you to sign a paper saying, "I am a criminal. I bombed schools. I am sorry. He wanted propaganda. And you are trained. Name, rank, serial number, date of birth. That's all you give. So the torture begins. They use the rope trick. It is simple and it is agonizing. They force you to lie on your stomach. They tie a rope around your ankles. Then they pull the rope up over your head and tie it to your wrists, which are bound behind your back. Then they pull. They bend your body backward into a bow shape. Your spine screams. Your shoulders pop out of their sockets. You can't breathe. The pain is white hot, encompassing your entire universe. They leave you like that for hours. Blood stops flowing to your limbs. You lose control of your bowels. You hallucinate. The guard comes in every hour. You sign? You sign now? You say no. They tighten the ropes. They beat you with rubber hoses. They lock your legs in iron stocks that are too small, cutting into your flesh until the bone is exposed. This goes on for days. You don't sleep. You don't eat. Eventually, everyone breaks. Everyone. It's not a question of courage. It's a question of biology. There is only so much pain a human body can process before the mind snaps. You sign the paper. You write the confession. And then they throw you into a cell. The cell is tiny, 7 feet by 7 feet. No windows, just a small air vent near the ceiling. A concrete slab for a bed. A bucket for a toilet. And the silence. Solitary confinement. This was the true weapon of the Hanoi Hilton. The pain of the ropes fades. The broken bones heal crookedly. But the isolation eats you alive. You are alone with your thoughts. Alone with your guilt. I broke. I signed. I am a traitor. That thought circles in your head like a vulture. You think about your family back home. Do they know I'm alive? Do they think I'm dead? You stare at the wall. You watch a gecko hunting a fly. That gecko becomes your only friend. You start to lose track of time. Is it day? Is it night? Is it Monday or Sunday? To survive, you have to build a world inside your head. One pilot built a house in his mind. Every day for 4 years, he would visualize laying the bricks, running the wiring, painting the walls. He knew exactly how many nails were in the floorboards. Another pilot played golf. He played 18 holes every morning in his mind. He remembered the smell of the grass, the weight of the club. If you stopped visualizing, if you stopped thinking, you would go insane. The NVA wanted us to feel abandoned. They told us, your country has forgotten you. You will die here. And lying there in the dark, hungry, sick with dysentery, covered in boils, listening to the rats scurry across the floor, you started to believe them. The North Vietnamese guards had a strategy. It was called divide and conquer. They believed that if they kept us apart, if they threw us into solitary confinement, the mint, and cut off all human contact, we would wither and die. They wanted us to feel like we were the only American left on Earth. They walled us up in stone. They forbade talking. If you were caught whispering to the cell next door, you were beaten. If you were caught singing, you were put in leg irons. They thought they had created a tomb of silence, but they were wrong. They didn't realize that you can lock up a man's body, but you cannot lock up his need to communicate. In the darkest days of 1965, inside the thick, damp walls of the Heartbreak Hotel, a captain named Carlisle Smitty Harris remembered something. Years ago, in a survival school class he had barely paid attention to, an instructor had talked about an old code used by British prisoners in World War II. It wasn't Morse code. Morse code relies on dots and dashes, short and long sounds. You can't make a long sound by banging on a wall. A bang is just a bang. So, Smitty taught the others the quadratic alphabet. It was a matrix. 5 rows, 5 columns, 25 letters. They dropped the letter K because C could replace it. The code was simple, yet brilliant. The first series of taps indicated the row. The second series indicated the letter. Tap, pause, tap. That's row 1, letter 1. A, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. That's row 1, Letter 2, B, tap, tap, tap. Pause, tap, tap, tap. That's row 3, letter 3. MAFLQV. Those were the key letters that started each row. You memorized them like a prayer. It started slowly. Smitty whispered it to the guy in the next cell through a crack under the door. That guy tapped it to the next guy. Within a week, the code had spread through the entire prison like a virus. The walls of the Hanoi Hilton, which were supposed to isolate us, suddenly became a telegraph system. We tapped on everything. We tapped with our knuckles on the walls. We tapped with stones on the floor. We swept the courtyard with our brooms in the rhythm of the code. Swish, swish. Swish, swish, swish. We even learned to cough in code. Imagine the scene. A guard is standing right outside your cell door with a rifle. You are lying on your bunk, staring at the ceiling. You hear a faint thump, thump, thump from the wall behind your head. It's the guy next door. He's asking, "Weicho?" You verify the guard isn't looking. You gently tap back with your elbow, masking the sound with your body. JIMHURTLEG. GBU. God bless you. That simple exchange, knowing someone else was there, knowing someone cared, was the difference between sanity and madness. The tap code became our lifeline. It became our oxygen. But it became something more than just chat. It became a command and control network. We established a chain of command. The highest ranking officer, no matter where he was held, was the boss. We called it SRO, Senior Ranking Officer. When Admiral James Stockdale, the highest ranking prisoner, was brought in, the code allowed him to take command of hundreds of men he had never seen. He issued orders through the walls. No confessions, no bowing in propaganda videos. Resist until you break, then bounce back. We developed a shorthand to tap faster. GN for good night. GBU for God bless you. DB for dope bag, news. When a new guy was shot down and thrown into the Hilton, he was terrified. He thought he was alone. Then, on his first night, he would hear it, the rhythm, shave, and a haircut. Tap, 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 tap. It was the universal greeting, the shibboleth. If he tapped back, 2 bits, he was welcomed into the fraternity. By the next morning, the entire prison knew his name, his rank, his squadron, and the latest baseball scores from the States. The guards knew something was happening. They saw our morale improving. They saw us smiling. They tried to stop it. They moved us around. They put extra guards in the corridors. If they caught you tapping, the punishment was severe. They would drag you out and beat you until you couldn't stand. They would throw you in the Calcutta latrine cell with the rats. But we never stopped. We couldn't stop. We tapped while they beat us. We tapped with broken fingers. One pilot, who had been tortured so badly his arms were paralyzed, learned to tap with his forehead against the floor. We memorized movies. Guys would tap out the entire plot of High Noon or Dr. Zhivago, scene by scene, line by line. It would take days to tell one movie. It kept our brains alive. We taught each other languages. We taught math. One guy taught a course on thermodynamics through a 12-inch concrete wall. The tap code transformed the Hanoi Hilton from a dungeon into a university. And most importantly, it transformed a group of broken, lonely individuals into a military unit. We were still fighting the war. We weren't flying jets anymore, but we were fighting with our knuckles. Every tap was an act of defiance. Every message passed was a victory against the enemy who tried to erase us. I remember one Christmas Eve. The guards had forbidden any celebration. The prison was dead silent. Then, slowly, a rhythm started on the walls. It wasn't a message. It was a beat. Tap, tap, tap. Hundreds of men in separate cells tapping in unison. We were tapping the rhythm of Silent Night. We couldn't sing, so we played the walls like a drum. The guards ran around in a panic, shouting, banging on the doors, trying to find the source. But the sound was coming from everywhere. It was coming from the soul of the prison. Tears streamed down my face in the dark. I wasn't alone. I was part of a chorus. And in that moment, tapping on that cold stone, I knew we were going to survive. Because as long as we had the code, we had each other. By late 1967, the North Vietnamese prison wardens were furious. Despite the torture, despite the isolation, the American resistance was growing. The tap code was everywhere. The prisoners were organized. The wardens decided to cut off the head of the snake. They identified the 11 most stubborn, most influential, and most defiant leaders. Among them were James Stockdale, Jeremiah Denton, and Sam Johnson. They rounded them up, blindfolded them, and trucked them to a secret facility behind the Ministry of National Defense. It was a small, white-walled courtyard containing tiny, windowless cells. We called it Alcatraz. It was designed for one purpose: to break the leaders, and through them, break the spirit of the other POWs. The conditions in Alcatraz were not just harsh, they were inhumane. The cells were 4 feet wide by 9 feet long, a concrete tomb. But the worst part was the leg irons. In the Hilton, you might get irons for punishment. In Alcatraz, you wore them 24 hours a day, every day, for years. The heavy iron cuffs were rusted. They dug into your ankles. The bar connecting them was solid iron, attached to the concrete floor. You couldn't walk. You couldn't exercise. You could barely turn over in your sleep. Muscles atrophied. Legs shrank to the size of arms. Open sores formed around the ankles and became infected. And yet, even here, in this black hole, they fought back. The story of Jeremiah Denton is the ultimate example of defiance. The NVA wanted to use him for propaganda. They cleaned him up, put him in a fresh uniform, and sat him in front of a television camera. They told him, "Tell the world you are treated well. Tell them you condemn the war." The cameras rolled. A Japanese reporter asked him questions. Denton stared into the bright lights. He knew that back home, intelligence officers would be analyzing every frame of this footage. He answered the questions verbally, saying what the guards forced him to say. But his eyes were doing something else. He stared straight at the lens, and he blinked.
Is this real?
Blink, blink,
We're really
blink,
leaving.
blink. It wasn't a nervous tick. It was Morse code. TORTURE. He spelled out the word torture right under the noses of his captors. When the footage aired in the US, the CIA saw it. The world saw it. For the first time, there was undeniable proof that American POWs were being tortured. Denton paid a heavy price for that. When the guards figured it out later, they beat him until he was nearly dead. But he had won. Then there was James Stockdale, the SRO. The guards told him he was going to be in a movie, a propaganda film to show how lenient the NVA were. They wanted to parade him like a trophy. Stockdale knew that if he appeared on film looking healthy, it would be used to hurt his country. So he decided to make himself unfilmable. He took a wooden stool in his interrogation room, and he started beating his own face. He smashed the stool against his cheeks, his nose, his eyes. He beat himself until his face was a swollen, bloody pulp, his eyes swollen shut. When the guards came in, they were horrified. They couldn't film a man who looked like a monster, so they put a hat on him to cover the bruises. Stockdale took a razor blade he had hidden, and he shaved a strip of hair right down the middle of his head, a reverse mohawk. He looked at the guards, blood streaming down his face, and said, "You can't film me now." They threw him back in the dark. This was the level of resistance in Alcatraz. They used their own bodies as weapons. They accepted pain, mutilation, and starvation as the price of honor. For 2 years, the Alcatraz Gang lived in solitary darkness. But they never broke faith with each other. They tapped on the floor with their shackles. Clank, clank. Are you there? I am here. Stay strong. They proved that you can chain a man's legs, but you cannot chain his will. January 1973. The Paris Peace Accords were signed. The news trickled into the prison. The guards stopped beating us. They started giving us more food, vegetables, even a little meat. They wanted to fatten us up before the cameras saw us. We were skeptical. We had been disappointed so many times before. "It's another trick," we whispered. But then they gave us clothes. Not the striped pajamas, but civilian-style windbreakers and trousers. They gave us toiletries. And on February 12, 1973, the buses arrived. We were loaded up, no blindfolds this time. As the bus drove through Hanoi, we looked out the windows. We saw the bridge we had bombed. We saw the people we had fought. It was surreal. We arrived at Gia Lam Airport. And there, sitting on the tarmac, was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. A Lockheed C-141 Starlifter, a giant silver American bird with the stars and stripes painted on the tail. It looked like a spaceship from the future. We got out of the buses. We formed up ranks. We were thin, gray-skinned, and hobbling, but we stood tall. We marched toward the plane. There were NVA officers standing there, and American officers waiting to receive us. When Jeremiah Denton stepped forward, he didn't hug the American colonel. He saluted. He said, "Sir, Captain Denton reporting for duty." Reporting for duty. After 7 years of hell, he was still a soldier. We walked up the ramp. The inside of the plane was cavernous. It smelled of disinfectant and America. Nurses were there, pretty American women. Some of us hadn't seen a woman in 6 years. We didn't know what to say. We just stared. The engines spooled up. That high-pitched whine was the sound of freedom. The plane taxied and took off. The cabin was silent. We were all holding our breath, waiting for a missile, waiting for the plane to turn back. Then, the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Gentlemen, we are feet wet." That meant we were over the ocean. We had left North Vietnamese airspace. The plane erupted. Men cheered. Men wept. Men hugged each other. We tore into the box lunches they gave us. Candy bars, sandwiches, milk. We were going home. But home wasn't the same place we had left. We had been gone for 5, 6, 7 years. The world had changed. Miniskirts, long hair, hippies, anti-war protests. The Beatles had broken up. Man had walked on the moon. We were like Rip Van Winkle, waking up in a different century. We landed at Clark Air Base in the Philippines first, then Hawaii, then the mainland. The reunions were agonizingly beautiful. I saw my wife. She looked older. My children. My son was a toddler when I left. Now he was playing Little League baseball. He looked at me like I was a stranger. I had to relearn how to be a father, how to be a husband, how to sleep in a soft bed without waking up screaming. Some marriages didn't survive. Some men came home to find their wives had moved on, assuming they were dead. And the physical toll remained. Brittle bones from years of malnutrition, failing eyesight from the darkness, nerve damage from the ropes. But we had something that no one else had. We had the brotherhood. We, the POWs of the Hanoi Hilton, share a bond that is stronger than blood. We know what it's like to have absolutely nothing but your honor. We know that the human spirit is tougher than concrete, stronger than iron shackles. We learned that freedom isn't free. It has a taste, and to us, it tastes like a cold glass of milk on a C-141 flying east. Decades later, people ask me how I survived. I tell them about the tap code. I tell them, I survived because the guy in the next cell survived. We carried each other. War takes everything from you, but it also gives you the truth. And the truth is, you are never truly alone, as long as someone is listening for your tap. This has been the story of POW survival in Vietnam, a story of darkness, resilience, and the unbreakable will to return with honor. Thank you for listening to Beneath the Metal. Welcome home.